we shall unravel the question at hand. What do avoidants need to feel safe with you? It's a paradox, is it not? The very people who appear so distant, those who have mastered the art of self-containment, often long for connection, albeit behind fortress walls. So let us embark on a journey through their hidden passages, laden with insights and stories designed to illuminate the avoidance search for safety. There exists a particular mystery about avoidance, a silent tapestry woven of self-reliance, wariness, and a profound desire to remain unentangled. At first glance, one might imagine they do not care, or that they prefer to exist in splendid isolation. Yet, in truth, many an avoidant yearns for closeness, so long as it does not imperil their sense of autonomy. You see, dear viewer, avoidants have often come to believe that true safety lies in distance. Their emotional vault is locked tight not because they wish to starve themselves of intimacy, but because they equate closeness with potential heartache. Perhaps a betrayal shaped this belief, or an upbringing where vulnerability was punished, ridiculed, or outright ignored. In building their fortress, they guard themselves against the dreaded onslaught of emotional demands, and so they present a riddle. Approach me, but do not crowd me. Show me you care, yet do not chase me. Offer me warmth, but do not burn me with intensity. If you have ever loved an avoidant, befriended one, or simply tried to coax them into deeper waters, you know the confusion that arises. How does one foster an environment where they feel safe enough to open, even a little? Tonight, we shall delve into precisely that. Prepare yourself for a long, winding discourse, peppered with wit and wisdom, as we seek to illuminate the guarded soul's hidden yearnings. Let me illustrate the nature of the avoidant with a gentle anecdote. We shall call them Gregory and Marianne, two acquaintances of mine who perfectly embodied the dance of intimacy and distance. Gregory was a master of polite conversation, charming, articulate, ever ready with a thoughtful quip. He could glide through social functions, leaving admirers in his wake, yet his personal life remained an enigma. One never knew his true joys or sorrows. If anyone pressed too hard to discover them, he would retreat faster than a cat avoiding a bath. Marianne, by contrast, was a creature of warmth and curiosity, someone who tried with all her might to draw Gregory from his shell. She invited him to dinners, asked after his family, inquired about his aspirations. Gregory would smile, answer with courtesy, but never truly reveal a glimmer of emotional depth. It was only after Marianne, exhausted by her many attempts, finally stepped back that Sir Gregory startled everyone by inquiring after her well-being. Quietly, discreetly, he asked mutual friends if she was unwell. He noticed her absence from gatherings with an uncharacteristic flicker of concern. Though he had appeared stoic, unaffected, even aloof, he cared more than he let on. He simply needed to feel safe, free from the sense of being overwhelmed or judged, before daring to approach even the outskirts of emotional closeness. In that subtle shift, we glimpse our central question. What does such a person need to feel secure enough to show their heart? When we speak of safety for an avoidant, we do not merely refer to physical safety, of course. We speak of emotional safety, the reassurance that intimacy will not consume them, that vulnerability will not lead to ridicule or betrayal. Let us list some of the cornerstones they often require. Respect for boundaries. It may seem obvious, but it is extraordinary how many well-intentioned souls fail here. If an avoidant signals discomfort, perhaps by changing the subject, averting their eyes, or gently withdrawing, pushing further can reinforce their fears. Conversely, respecting that boundary demonstrates you are not a threat. Consistency and predictability. Chaos unsettles most people, but it can be especially jarring for avoidants. They find solace in knowing what to expect. If you show up in their life with sincerity yet unwavering calm, you offer a gentle environment where trust can germinate. Slow building. Trust, Avoidants rarely fling open the gates of their heart in a single dramatic moment. They prefer a gradual unveiling. Each shared secret or personal anecdote is a small test, one that, if handled with empathy, may lead to deeper disclosures over time. Space to self-regulate. Even the most caring partner or friend can be suffocating if they constantly demand closeness. Avoidants require pockets of solitude to process emotions, check for potential overwhelm, and reaffirm their sense of independence. Validation without pressure. A simple acknowledgement, "I see you're uneasy, and that's okay," can do wonders. It affirms that their feelings are heard, without pushing them to divulge more than they wish. It might all sound straightforward, yet weaving these elements into real human interactions can be tricky indeed. We shall go deeper into each principle, sprinkling in stories and reflections to illuminate the path. Often, avoidants did not choose to become so. In many cases, their survival strategy took root in childhood. Picture a young boy who rushes to his parent with tears streaming down his cheeks, only to be told, "Stop crying, that's weak." Or a little girl who tries to confide in a caregiver but is repeatedly dismissed or met with anger. With each painful encounter, the child learns, "Depend solely on yourself. Trust is dangerous." By the time adulthood arrives, the child has become adept at self-reliance to a fault, shunning the vulnerability they associate with rejection or scorn. It's akin to forging armor. Every negative experience adds another layer of steel. While this armor protects the heart, it also prevents genuine closeness. For an avoidant to feel safe, they need to see, through consistent experience, that you are not an echo of their past. You will not brand their vulnerability as weakness, nor exploit it for your gain. Only then can their mind entertain the possibility that not all closeness is fraught with peril. Boundaries are the avoidant's earliest line of defense, akin to the moat surrounding the fortress. They are also the first test of whether you respect them as an individual. If you sense an avoidant shifting away from certain topics, or if they vanish for days after an emotionally charged conversation, it is paramount that you do not rage or demand an immediate return. Instead, practice acceptance. You might say, "I understand you need space. Take the time you require. I'm here when you're ready." Such an approach can be profoundly disarming. Why? Because you demonstrate that you will not punish them for tending to their emotional boundaries. In a world where they have long feared intrusion, you become an ally in preserving their autonomy. Remember Marianne and Gregory from our earlier tale? Marianne's initial attempts to coax him out felt to him like an invasion, albeit a kindly meant one. When she finally ceased her attempts, allowing him the room to notice her absence, he began to realize that she was not an intruder, but someone who could hold space without breaching it. That subtle shift laid the foundation for a deeper trust. Next, we come to the theme of consistency. Avoidants often dread emotional whiplash. Grandiose declarations of love one day, ice-cold silence the next. If you oscillate too wildly, you confirm their suspicion that emotional closeness is volatile and hazardous. In contrast, a steady, reliable presence can become a beacon of safety. Picture a calm harbor light in the distance. The avoidant might circle the waters, uncertain whether to dock, but every time they look up, they see that same reassuring glow. Over time, they may risk drawing nearer. Be mindful not to interpret consistency as smothering. You need not, and indeed should not, barrage them with texts or calls every hour. Rather, it's about letting them know, in measured, stable ways, that you remain someone they can count on. This can be as simple as sending a thoughtful message once a week, or politely checking in with a question they once expressed interest in. Just be unwavering in your sincerity. Overblown gestures can seem like storms on the horizon, leaving them anxious for the next wave to crash. Trust, that elusive bond. For avoidance, trust is not an instantaneous epiphany. It's built from a mosaic of tiny interactions. each one carefully observed. Perhaps you share a small personal detail, something that reveals your own vulnerability. If you do so without pressuring them to reciprocate, you display a quiet confidence that vulnerability is permissible. Over time, they may respond in kind, offering a snippet of their inner world. Let me share a short parable. Imagine a squirrel in a park, nibbling at seeds. If you approach it with loud footsteps, outstretched arms, it flees. But if you sit calmly on a bench, scattering seeds at a modest distance, the squirrel's curiosity might coax it closer. Eventually, it may gather the courage to eat right by your side. So it is with avoidance. You build trust by showing that you do not need to capture them in your arms all at once. You are there, quietly, steadily, letting them gather the seeds of your sincerity. Of all the truths we might glean about what avoidants need, space is paramount. Consider the plant that requires not just water and sunlight, but also enough room for its roots to breathe and grow. Suffocate it, and it withers. Avoidants often need time alone to process feelings. After a particularly intimate conversation, they may experience an internal swirl of relief, confusion, and fear. They must retreat to ensure they do not drown in this ocean of emotion. By respecting that impulse and not taking it personally, you demonstrate that you honor their method of coping. Oh, but here's the catch. Do not assume that your distance automatically means they do not care. Indeed, many avoidants feel a pang of longing even as they withdraw. The difference is that they are adept at compartmentalizing that longing. They choose not to feed it until they feel safe. So if you note they have vanished for a few days, it may well be that your closeness stirred something within them, and they are calibrating themselves to handle it. If you respond with accusations or pleas, you risk reinforcing their fear. Gentle acceptance, on the other hand, can become a lifeline to which they return once they've found their emotional bearings. Validation is an oft-overlooked tool for building safety. Imagine an avoidant confesses a small insecurity, perhaps their fear of being trapped in a demanding relationship. If you respond with, "Oh, come on, that's silly, I'd never trap you," you inadvertently diminish their concern. Far better to say, "I understand. I see that you've been hurt before, and it makes sense you'd worry about that." Such validation tells them, your feelings are real and acceptable here. You do not trivialize their experiences, nor do you pressure them to get over it on your timeline. Instead, you create a space where they can safely hold their fears in the light of understanding. Over time, that acceptance can encourage them to loosen their grip on self-protection, if only a little. When an avoidant sees that their vulnerabilities aren't used against them, they inch closer to deeper connection. Now, let us pause and address a few misconceptions about avoidance that might sabotage your efforts. Myth 1. Avoidants do not care at all. This is rarely accurate. Many avoidants do care, sometimes quite profoundly. They simply resist showing it in conventional ways. Their internal world may roil with longing, but they have learned to keep it under lock and key. Myth 2. You must pry them open. Forceful emotional prying often backfires. Instead, the subtle approach of building trust, demonstrating consistency, validating feelings, respecting boundaries, invites them to self-disclose on their own terms. Myth 3. Once an avoidant opens up, they'll remain open. Openness for an avoidant can be cyclical. They might step forward one day, only to take 2 steps back the next. Recognize these fluctuations as part of the journey, not a personal slight. Despite the emphasis on the avoidance perspective, healthy relationships are a shared dance. If you find yourself giving ceaselessly while the avoidant remains aloof, you risk depleting your own emotional reserves. Ensure that while you offer compassion and patience, you also attend to your own needs. A relationship that only revolves around the avoidant's comfort quickly becomes imbalanced. Yet, ironically, being self-assured enough to stand in your own independence without insisting they match your intimacy level precisely, can be the very trait that reassures them. They see that you are not a black hole of emotional demands, nor are you so fragile that their reticence will destroy you. You have your own life, your own passions, your own sense of self. This self-possession can be an irresistible invitation for the avoidant to step a bit closer, safe in the knowledge they aren't your sole anchor. To further illustrate, allow me to recount the story of Edward, a consummate avoidant I once knew, and the woman who eventually drew him into a space of trust, Beatrice. Edward was known for his refined manners, his impeccable taste in wines, and his absolute refusal to speak about his past. He hosted extravagant gatherings, concerts, lectures, lavish dinners, but never shared a personal memory or vulnerability. Beatrice, a gentle soul, attended one such gathering at Edward's estate. She marveled at the cherry orchard outside the manor, remarking upon its timeless beauty. Edward nodded politely but offered no personal commentary. Instead of pressing him, Beatrice drifted among the guests, content to enjoy the evening on her own terms. In subsequent events, Beatrice continued to exude a quiet independence. She would greet Edward kindly, yet never corner him with probing questions. She'd speak of her own passions, poetry, painting, without expecting an immediate reciprocal revelation. Over many months, a subtle shift occurred. Edward began asking her about her art, offering small reflections on beauty, hinting, ever so gently, that he too admired the orchard at dawn. At one gathering, as dawn light touched the orchard's blossoms, Edward confessed that the orchard was his mother's pride and joy, one of the few memories of her he retained before she passed away. This was no grand confession of heartbreak, no sobbing meltdown, but for Edward, it was a monumental step. By simply observing his boundaries, respecting his silence, and maintaining a calm presence, Beatrice had created a safe space for him to share this personal thread of his life. Thus far, we have laid out general principles. Let us now distill them into practical steps you might undertake if you wish to cultivate safety for the avoidant in your life. Offer non-intrusive contact. Rather than daily text demanding a response, try a gentle check-in at predictable intervals. Just wanted to say hello. I hope your day is going well. This shows you care, but leaves them free to reply on their own schedule. Be transparent about your own feelings. While avoidants fear being cornered, they often appreciate honesty. If you feel uncertain or wish for closer connection, express it without ultimatums. I'd love to spend more time with you, but I respect that you might not be ready. Let me know what works for you. Avoid mind games. Attempting to manipulate or provoke jealousy typically backfires. If the avoidant detects hidden agendas, they will retreat further. Authenticity is your friend. Listen actively. If they share something personal, be it minor or major, respond with genuine interest. Reflect back what you heard, affirm their feelings, and resist the urge to judge or criticize. Normalize emotional interludes. If tension arises or an emotionally charged moment flares, remain composed. Affirm, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. We can take a break and come back to this. This demonstrates that conflict need not be catastrophic. Exemplify autonomy. Show that you too have your own boundaries, interests, and needs. This reassures them that you are not seeking to devour their independence, but are merely seeking a balanced partnership. Inevitably, there will be moments when the avoidant withdraws despite your best efforts. Perhaps an emotional topic arises, or they sense a deeper intimacy looming on the horizon. How you respond in these moments can define the trajectory of your relationship. Be patient but not a doormat. If they need a few days, offer them that time. However, if their withdrawal stretches indefinitely without explanation, it's fair to gently inquire or state your own boundary. I understand you need space, but I also need communication at some point. Don't take it personally. Often the avoidance retreat is about their inner turmoil, not your inadequacy. Assuming it's all your fault can lead to unnecessary resentment and misunderstanding. Offer a clear path back. A simple line, "I'm here whenever you feel up to talking," can reassure them that they won't be scolded or shamed upon their return. This helps quell the panic that intensifies their retreat. While it's beautiful to create a safe haven for an avoidant, remember that relationships thrive on reciprocity. If your efforts to build safety are met with perpetual stonewalling, if you find yourself drained or lonely, you may need to reevaluate the viability of the connection. Avoidance can change, yes, but they must want to. No amount of gentle acceptance will help if they remain wholly disinclined to engage. Cherish your own worth in the process. Let us, for a moment, eavesdrop on the avoidant's possible thoughts when they do begin to sense safety in your presence. They didn't push me for more details. Maybe it's okay to share a little more next time. I like that they have their own life. It means they won't cling to me. I was afraid they'd judge me, but they listened calmly. Perhaps I was wrong to assume the worst. I'm still nervous about opening up, but at least I know I won't be cornered. Such realizations often bloom quietly in the background, emerging over weeks or months. If you sustain a consistent demonstration of respect and empathy, these seeds can take root, leading to a more open rapport. Conflict. I hear you ask, what if the avoidant does something that genuinely hurts me? How can I address it without shattering their fragile sense of safety? Calmly communicate impact. For instance, when you disappeared for a week, I felt worried and neglected. I care about you and would appreciate a brief message if you need time away. This approach clarifies your emotions, focusing on how their behavior affects you. Invite problem solving. Instead of demanding, "You must text me daily," say, "Could we find a middle ground? Maybe a check-in every couple of days so I know you're okay." This fosters collaboration rather than issuing ultimatums. Assure them you aren't seeking to control. Acknowledge their perspective. I respect that you don't like feeling tied down, but I also need reassurance that you're safe and well. How can we accommodate both needs? When conflict is navigated with steady composure and willingness to compromise, the avoidant learns that disagreements need not be catastrophic. This too can deepen their sense of emotional safety. If an avoidant does come to trust you, the transformation can be subtle yet profound. You may notice them volunteering small confessions, a childhood story, a fleeting sadness, a dream for the future. They might, for the first time, invite you into a space that once lay hidden, be it a literal room in their home or a metaphorical corner of their mind. Admittedly, they may never morph into the sort who floods you with effusive declarations, but if you see them take small steps, offering more consistent communication, apologizing when they vanish, or responding to conflict with less defensiveness, you can be sure your efforts have borne fruit. Let us shift our lens momentarily to you, dear viewer. In the process of giving an avoidant the safety they need, you might discover aspects of yourself you never knew. Perhaps you learn patience, or find that you have your own boundaries that need reinforcing. Maybe you once equated closeness with constant contact, only to realize you too value pockets of independence. In a strange twist, the very things avoidants need to feel safe, respect, consistency, space, validation, are the cornerstones of any healthy relationship. Their heightened sensitivity simply forces these qualities to the forefront. By nurturing them, you cultivate a relational environment that can be beneficial for both parties, avoidant or not. And so, dear viewer, we arrive at the essence of our discourse. What avoidants need to feel safe with you is neither unattainable nor shrouded in absolute secrecy. It requires mindful presence, gentle respect for boundaries, unwavering consistency, acceptance of cyclical progress, and an abiding empathy for the wounds that shape their guarded stance. Each avoidant is unique, of course, so no formula can guarantee success in every case. Yet the overarching principle remains. Demonstrate, through actions rather than mere words, that you are not here to bulldoze their walls or demand immediate transformation. Show them you value their autonomy as much as you value closeness. Communicate that you are a steady presence, like a quiet lamp in a dark room, offering warmth without blinding intensity. In that calm glow, an avoidant may finally dare to reveal the more tender parts of themselves. If the day comes when they share a cherished memory, or turn to you for solace in a rare moment of pain, count it as a precious sign that your gentleness has borne fruit. But even if such moments remain sparse, you can rest secure in the knowledge that you have done your part to create a safe harbor. Ultimately, it is up to the avoidant to weigh the risk of vulnerability against the desire for connection. You cannot choose for them. All you can do is ensure that if they do choose closeness, they find it in an environment of trust and acceptance. So, dear viewer, may this monologue equip you with the wisdom to walk compassionately beside the avoidant souls in your life. May you remain steadfast in your own sense of self, while extending a hand of understanding to those who fear the vulnerability that true companionship demands. For in the quiet interplay of boundaries, respect, and gradual revelation, we find not only the secret to making avoidance feel safe, but a glimpse of how all human hearts might learn to love with gentleness and grace. Carry these reflections forward, if you will, into your own journeys of connection. And should you find yourself on the threshold of an avoidance fortress, remember, the softest knock, the calmest presence, and the patient acceptance of silences can sometimes open gates once thought forever closed.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.